Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? This is Daniel Cutright, and welcome to today's episode of Winning Mentality with my special guest, Mr. Paul Kirschbaum. Paul, how you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Awesome to have you on here, and I'm really excited about this one. Paul, we know that you are a chef, and I want to talk a little bit about an idea that you had recently called Homemade Homeschool. We'll get into that. About a cooking show that you did for kids. So excited to dive into that. But I've actually been able to experience some of your cooking, and every time I've eaten anything that you've cooked, it's been a phenomenal experience. And so before we jump into the show that you started, I'd love to hear just a little bit about your background as a chef. How'd you get into that? Was that something you always knew you wanted to do? Maybe just take us through that a little bit here.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I'm not a chef anymore. I retired a couple years back from that. But yeah, actually, no, I didn't expect to be a chef. To be honest with you, I grew up in Texas. I played football. I thought I was going to be a college football player. That was my goal. I took a cupcake class that I thought was a cupcake class, was a culinary class. And my teacher, who almost failed me, by the way, told me that you need to go to the CIA. And I thought she meant the bang bang CIA, not the chop chop CIA. So I was like, no, I don't think that's for me. And then, but I mean, as a kid, I've always cooked. My dad always cooked. It was either the best thing you ever had or barely edible. But most of the time, it was one of the best things I ever had. So I grew up with food. My mom, she had a few things she loved to cook. And then I guess right near senior year, I realized that, I was good at football, but I wasn't that good at football. So I made a decision to go the culinary route. I traveled to Spain, learned how to cook there a little bit, ran with the Bulls, did the whole San Fermin experience, came back and realized this was my passion. So I really got into I got into the CIA, Culinary of America, up in Hyde Park. Did 4 years there. I broke it up halfway through. I stopped. I finished my associates, then traveled to Australia, got another degree in restaurant management, and then went back to CIA to get my my bachelor's, because that was my goal, to get my bachelor's.
Okay.
That's how I got started. That was the beginning of it.
Okay. Now, and were you kind of cooking or working at a restaurant during the time that you were going to school, or what did that look like?
I did before. You have to have, at the time, you had to have 6 months of experience to get into the CIA. I don't know if that's changed, honestly, but I don't know what it is anymore. But I actually worked for a small little brewery, and then I also worked for Chili's. Chili's was one of my first jobs. Worked in the kitchen. I did both positions. I did front of the house and back of the house. So I waited tables and I cooked in the kitchen. And then during school, I kind of just focused on my grades. I wasn't the best student ever. I was not the greatest at homework. I was not the greatest at my grades. I played football, and that was my road. So going into culinary, I actually had to take some pre-entry tests to get in on math and some other skills, because I was not the best student. So CI was perfect for me because it gave me discipline. It trained me. You couldn't walk into the kitchen without your sideburns couldn't be past to here. You couldn't have any facial hair. You had to be shaved. Your socks had to be black. You couldn't wear white socks, or they'll send you home. It was very strict. It was I'm not going to go as far as military, but it was very strict. But no, I didn't work much. I worked during the summer at times, but I took a full load.
Yeah, I've often heard people that are in culinary talk about the discipline that it takes, and just the high intensity atmosphere that job can bring too. I know I actually spent one summer waiting tables, and I often tell people I think everybody at some point in their life should have to have an experience like that, because it was, for me, one of the more challenging things that I did. Would you say that even kind of that time being, where you were waiting tables, do you feel like you learned things from that have really helped you in your career?
Everybody should work 2 weeks in the front of the house and 2 weeks in the back of the house. That would fix the world.
Man.
I'm kidding, but it really is. It teaches you humility. It teaches you work ethic, and it also teaches you how to just sometimes smile and nod.
Yeah.
Some of the best advice I ever got was from my managers and actually one of my chef mentors. He was like, sometimes the best thing to do is to keep your mouth shut.
Hmm.
You don't always have to say something. I mean, you can think all you want and you can take back and reflect and don't take abuse. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you need to step back and just think about what was said to you and how you're going to respond to that. Because it's not easy in the kitchen. It really isn't. And then working in the front of the house, the interpersonal communication with customers, the biggest thing I think that's missing in today's service industry is what I call soft skills.
Hmm.
Everybody has the hard skills. Everybody can cut an onion. Everybody can pour a beer. Anybody can carry a tray to a table. But the interpersonal communication with the customer is it's hard. You can't teach it almost. It's hard to
Yeah.
teach. It's not easy. It can be done, but it's really, really difficult.
Yeah. That's so true, and that's so powerful. It seems simple, but I've even heard that, and you see it across a lot of industries today. You get kids that come out of school and they have the technical skills, but it's the soft skills that companies are looking for across the board. So valuable. So you're in the works. You're becoming a chef. What would you say were some of the things maybe that you learned even from the chef side that kind of shaped you into your career trajectory?
Wow, that was. I mean, I started off. I got lucky. I got a lot of good breaks. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I got some really good breaks. I was a private chef
Hmm.
really early in my career, probably in my early 20s. I was executive chef by 25, and I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. um, I got into a director of food and beverage position probably mid to late 20s. Again, I learned more than anything, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to lead people. I wasn't prepared to lead by example. Um, but what I did learn was my communication skills. You know, they were warp speed. You really have a chance when you have 200, 300 people looking at you for leadership. You kind of have to just either sink or swim. Sometimes I made it, sometimes I did not do well, and that was the learning process. Um, I believe this, and this is not just in culinary. This is a lot of industries. It takes 10 years to really hone a craft.
Hmm.
I had no clue what I was doing until I hit 30. When I hit 30, it kind of popped on. I go, oh, okay, kind of know what I'm doing now. And not all the way. Trust me, the more that I learn, the more I realize I don't know anything. Because I wanted to like gather this information. I'm like sucking in. I'm like, all right, I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I can make this foie gras. I can suckle a pig and I can spin it around and brine it and smoke it. But there's so much more to know. There's so many cuisines to know. You can't know it all. And there are some savants out there. There's some people at 22-year-old, you can stick them in a restaurant, they're going to be the best of the best. But they're very rare. They're the ones that go pro. You know, they're how many athletes go pro?
Hmm.
You know what? 300 go to the NFL. You know, it's out of how many? So I think it just takes a little bit of time to hone your craft. And, you know, when it clicked, it clicked. And then
Yeah.
it became a little easier. It still was dealing with the day-to-day stuff. I spend more time, when I was an executive chef, I spent more time on the daily maintenance than I did actually cooking. I haven't cooked professionally in a kitchen in a long time.
Wow. So it's interesting because we live, what some would say in a microwave society today, where you get a lot of people that they want fast results. I think the average millennial switches jobs every less than 24 months now, I think is the stat. But the message and, kind of what you learned is, hey, it wasn't until I was 30, it wasn't until I'd spent, 10 years doing this that I started to really master my craft and, understand some of these nuances. What would you say to, millennials or people that are even pursuing a career in culinary today? Like, what type of advice would you give them as far as, just being patient with what they're pursuing?
That's a hard one because in general, and I've actually said this to my own family members, I go, first of all, if you want to open a restaurant, don't do it.
Hmm.
And this is prior to what's going on right now. I
Yeah.
tell people, do not do it. Most people that have the knowledge to open a restaurant will not open a restaurant. Now, if you have the backing and it's not your own money, it's a little different story. But The work that goes into it's a lot. I got out of the day-to-day operations because I had a kid and now I have two. So that changed.
Congrats, by the way, on that newborn number 2 there. So congrats.
I'm too old to be having new kids, but hey, hard something to tell. You know what? Honestly, I would just say hone your craft.
Hmm.
Whatever it is, love it, hone your craft. You don't have to be passionate about what you do for a living. If you're passionate about cooking, but you don't want to cook, fine, keep cooking on the side. There's so many things out there that you don't have to cook for a living if you're passionate about it. You have to love it. It's a pure love, and it will take a toll on a lot of relationships, internal and external. It is a hard job. You will not work 40 hours. If you want to work 20 to 40 hours a week, it's not the job for you. You can do whatever you want. I'm not judging people. This job is just a lot more hours. You're not always at high peak at these hours, but if you want holidays off, it's not the job for you. But some people, it does work that way. It does fit their lifestyle, and that's okay. I did it for years, but it's something that it's not just a passion. It has to be a love, a pure love.
Yeah. There's so many good points in what you just said there, Paul. And I think oftentimes and this is, I think, what you're alluding to as well, but when we're growing up, people always ask us the question of what do you want to do? And we get so focused around the what. And you mentioned in there, hey, just because you're passionate about cooking doesn't necessarily mean you need to make a career out of there. And I think a lot of times the question that we fail to ask, more so than the what do you want to do, is the how do you want to live? And I think if more people spent time reflecting on how do I want to live, then that would help them shape their decisions. You talked about honing your craft in there. Do you feel like out of this pursuit of honing your craft, that's what really helped you find joy in what you're doing and maybe take you directions that you didn't even expect, but you were okay with that? I think a lot of times we try to have this plan perfectly, mapped out. You and I talked a little bit about this before as well, but in the kitchen especially, adaptability is something that is huge. And, because I even asked you the question of, hey, where do you kind of see yourself going next? And I think that was something that I picked up on, is just you have this mindset of adaptability. So I know that was kind of a loaded question there a little bit, and I kind of went a few different directions, but would you agree with that? And just, kind of talk about how adaptability is played into just how you approach things, and then maybe even take us into how that led to what you're doing now with the homemade homeschool.
Adapt or die. It's that simple. The reason I started in the kitchen, I was executive chef. I actually moved to the front of the house because a customer, I was working for a client. It was a 6-month contract, I think, if I remember correctly. And they didn't have a POS system, a point of sale system. And I told them that you need one. I was 20, in my late 20s, early 30s. And I told them, like, you need a POS system. And then they're like, well, we don't know how to do it. So I was like, well, I'll figure it out. So we got one that's pretty cheap, and I loaded it. I figured it out. And that's how I kind of moved to the front of the house. Started with that. And then it started with SOPs, standard operating procedures, and then writing, our manuals for new hires and make sure our paperwork was, up to code. And I evolved. So I actually left the kitchen. I haven't cooked in the kitchen in at least 8 years, maybe 7, on a consistent basis. So I moved to the front of the house because I wanted to be more valuable. I don't want to be, hone your craft is not just cooking in the kitchen. Hone your craft is the restaurant industry. You know how to wait tables, you know how to talk to people, you know how to pour beer, you know how to fix a keg system. When your CO2 goes, where do you go find your backup? If you lose your walk-in, what do? Where's the closest place that has dry ice? And then if you get dry ice, you got to make sure nobody goes in there without somebody else, because the fumes it puts off. So you just honing your craft as a whole is not just working on one thing. It's working in the whole industry as a whole. Because you know what, if I couldn't work in the back of the house, I could always at least bartend. Now with what's going on nowadays, I never thought that the bottom of the restaurant industry would just drop out. I always said, and I said this for years, and I was wrong. I said, everybody's always got to eat. Well, the bottom fell out. It really did.
Yeah.
And delivery, sorry, most restaurants can't. If they've never done it before, they really can't start up and maintain that kind of. A few can that have adapted, but it's really difficult to start from scratch to get into delivery, pickup, to go, curbside. That's a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's not as easy as, oh, let's put up a sign, throw up a website, and good luck. So I think adapting as a person in the restaurant industry is kind of what the industry has to do now. It's going to adapt. It's going to be not the same with what you're used to. And I tell you right now, everybody that's listening, expect much higher prices. Just telling you right now.
Mm.
You've probably already seen that at the store. But what happened was when I work for a large food service company. I am my title is business solutions specialist. So I go into restaurants and I help them do three things to make it simple. I help make, save, solve. Make money, save money, solve problems. Well, when I got furloughed and I'm sitting at home and I'm not used to sitting at home, I spent 60 nights on the road last year. It was difficult. The first week wasn't fun. So talking with my wife, she gave me really good direction. She's like, do something you love. And what do you love? And I go, I always loved cooking. I knew it wasn't going to always be my life, but I knew I'd be involved in it somehow. And one night honestly, I had a nice cold beer and sat there and go, we're going to do some cooking classes for kids and they're going to be free. And I would never change that no matter what. I mean, they'll always be free, because the one thing that I think that my daughter gets involved in is when I start cooking. She jumps up. I made a little cooking stool for her. She gets up, she gets involved. She wants to be part of it. And I felt like with the parents not used to being homeschooling their kid, working from home, maybe this could help some way, at least alleviate a little pressure on them. And then the kids would like it. And I'm telling you, they have a lot of fun. They have a lot of fun doing it.
What's some of the feedback that you've gotten from parents or kids that are participating in these classes?
They would eat something they never would have eaten before. That's the biggest one I get. One said, my kid won't eat peanut butter and jelly together. They'll eat peanut butter and they'll eat jelly, but they won't eat them together. And then one of the recipes was a peanut butter and jelly sushi roll, kind of flat bread. We rolled it out, stuffed it, and rolled it up like sushi. And they loved it. And they eat peanut butter and jelly now together. My niece hated mozzarella. Of all things, hated mozzarella. And now she likes mozzarella. So I think it's just trying new food, new techniques, and just almost not forced, but pushed into things that they normally wouldn't try.
Okay. And then how are the shows structured? How do you have these set up?
It's evolved since the beginning. At first, it started off as 30 minutes. I talked. I couldn't see anybody. I had the camera set up, and I just went through my cooking. And my daughter helped me when she felt like it, because sometimes she doesn't feel like it. After that evolved a little bit, friends, I got a lot of feedback from friends and family. And what we did is we actually, I turned it around, and instead of me being behind a screen, I put the screen in front of me so I can see all the kids. So now it's more interactive, where we made pasta last Friday, and they were making pasta, and they're like, why is my dough falling apart? I'm like, put it in front of the camera. Let me see it. And they put it in front of the camera. I see the dough. I'm like, add a little bit more of this, add a little more of that, roll it again, and then they show it to me. And so it's more interactive than it was. But basically, we go through 2 recipes, pretty simple, 3 different age ranges from 4 to 6, 7 to 9, and then 10 plus. We were doing 3 a week. We've cut back because of, I have a little boy at home. But that's kind of how it goes. We try to make it simple, and ingredients that we can all easily get a hold of, because we know some things are more difficult to find nowadays.
And obviously the parents are there alongside the kids doing this as well.
We send out a weekly email talking about what we're going to do the next week, with all the ingredients, their shopping list, and what they're going to need equipment wise. But for the kids, like for the 4-year-olds, instead of using knives, we use pizza rollers. So like we're cutting the crust off a piece of white bread, and we use it as a pizza roller, a little more safe than popping out a knife. Scissors, we use kitchen shears just to cut things. But I always put in the document that I send out the morning of what parents need help with boiling water, or if we have using a toaster oven, or if we're using knives, or peeling an orange, or things that the kids will need some help with, so they're not just shocked when I'm just pop up on screen.
Okay, that's awesome. And I would imagine even flipping around the screen, so now that you can see your audience too, that probably creates just a more joyful experience for you, so you can see their interactions and how they're doing as they're going through these recipes.
Absolutely, way more fun. I'm telling you, the first 2 weeks, I would talk to my wife. I'm like, these are brutal. I mean, it's a lot of work, a lot more work than I thought I was going to go into. To be honest with you, there's a lot of work. Anybody that does any cooking show, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Just the planning, having everything. I always forget something. Let's just be honest. But it's way more rewarding to see these kids cook some. We did one on Friday. These two little girls couldn't be more than 6, 7 years old. We made a fruit pizza. It looked better than my pizza. Way better than my pizza. Like I was like complete shock. I'm like, man, I'm getting old.
Oh, that's awesome. It's funny. I do some speaking engagements too. And before, pre-COVID, it was all in person. And so you'd have an audience there to get audience feedback. And, people used to talk about my biggest fear is public speaking. And I no longer think that that's true. I think my biggest fear became talking to a camera where you couldn't see anybody on the other side. It was incredibly harder than doing it in an actual room. And so, no, it makes a huge difference when you can actually see your audience there.
Absolutely. I thought it'd be easier without seeing them. It's harder. It's much harder. And I went too fast too. That was the biggest feedback I got. Like, you're too fast. You got to slow down. But I'm cooking I'm cooking. I haven't taught, other than teaching my daughter, I haven't taught a lot of cooking classes. I've taught people how to cook, but not kids. And it's a whole different game. But I like the pure joy you see it. Some of these kids they're good. They're really good cooks. Now we got to teach them. Now I should do a class to teach them how to clean, how to do a dish.
That's awesome. I almost kind of, as you're going through this, it makes me think about certain athletes that have even gone on to become coaches. It's like, for a while they get very excited about the sport that they're playing or they're pursuing, but then they shift over into the role of a coach, and maybe they start with working with elite athletes, but then they start working with maybe high school kids or people that are more almost baseline in their skills, and they find a lot more joy in watching the development there. And what you're doing is so cool, because there's not, to my knowledge, a lot out there that is, really cooking for ages 4 to 6. I think most of the time, even if I remember in my own schooling, it wasn't until middle school that the first culinary class was offered.
Yeah. The luckily is I don't consider myself a top flight chef or former chef or cook. That helps me. I worked hard and I got where I got by, working my butt off. You look, if you want to equate to sports, like, would Peyton Manning be a good coach? I mean, sitting back, he was so good. Would that be frustrating for him to sit back and go, can you please just do it this way?
Yeah. Yep.
So some of the chefs that are, I say, top notch, I mean, they can teach, and it is not easy.
Right.
I think what makes me, I would consider mediocre, above average, cook or chef, I relate better because I know how hard it is. It didn't come easy to me. The flavor profiles took 10 years. It took 10 years for me to kind of get it. Now these kids starting at 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so their taste buds change every 7 years. Your taste buds change, so that's going to be a challenge. But just knowing a basic life skill of knowing how to cook something simple is, I think, really important.
Yeah.
As simple as how to start a fire. If you're out camping and you're taught in the Girl Scouts how to start a fire, it's an important skill. So I think learning how to cook the basics, we're not making foie gras here or terrines, but basic cooking skills is really important.
Yeah. How big have your classes gotten now? About how many people are tuning into these?
It depends. It's been a little less the last 2 weeks because I've only done one a week, and it's been on a Friday because my weeks are so busy. But we get up to 30 kids. We're going to be doing one for the Girl Scouts in New Hampshire in June, which they'll actually earn a badge for this one. So we're going to actually meet the criteria. We'll have about 20 Girl Scouts on per show. If it's more than 20, getting the feedback and seeing what they're cooking is really hard.
Yeah.
I'm live, I'm Zooming, I record them, but they're live is just so much better.
Mm,
So any more than 20, it gets a little bogged down. I mean, we can do it, but it's not the same. It's just me talking. It's not me teaching.
that makes sense. And you've had people reach out to you to even talk about a way to monetize this. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a good friend in Australia. Met a couple friends in Texas. It's not why I'm doing it, and I won't do it. It's not for the money. It really isn't, and
Yeah.
it's not. It's just, food's expensive. Picking up, it's just to teach, have a good time. It's 30 minutes. Really, I'm going to charge. I don't know. To me, it just it feels a little greedy.
Yeah. That's so pure. And I think there's so much value in that too. And, you're doing it for the right reasons. And I think that when you find something that your intentions are pure behind it, the blessings are going to come back to you in different ways. Maybe it's not monetary, but like you said, the joy that you're receiving. And then you even have something now where your own daughter is participating in this with you. That's priceless, I would imagine.
Yeah, it really is. I don't even know. I honestly, I can't even remember what drove this. It was just sitting there, and I had to do something. I had to do something.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was. It's a tough time, and this is where people adapt and make something better. If I can make
Hmm.
one family better, if I can make one thing better, then it's worth it. And again, it's not forever. Once I get back
Yeah.
to work, I probably won't do it as much. But
Right.
I will keep this in the back burner, and I always will have this. And I think that's part of it. I've recorded every single one I've done. I might have missed one or two, and I'll have it with my daughter. My daughter will see this.
Yeah.
So I think that part of it's really cool to me. Um, and I think my close friends that have been a part of this, and their feedback alone has been amazing. So why not? I mean, I think that if more people just did one good thing, and I'm not the greatest person. I'm not trying to put a halo on me, or anything. And there's a lot of people doing way more important things than I'm doing. But if one person does one good thing, I think that trickle down effect will go a little further. And sometimes it takes people a little longer to get to that spot, and it took me a lot longer. But I'm much more appreciative of where I am now, even during these tough times, than I would be without it.
That's such a great mindset. And you often hear talk about there's a silver lining in, adversity you're going through, or the classic phrase of, through every adversity comes a seed of equal or greater benefit. And, I think you're exactly right. People that are taking this challenging circumstance, sometimes you watch, if you go back to the financial crisis of 2008, if you go back to the Great Depression and you look at the different things that came out of these circumstances, it was from people that just allowed themselves to stay creative, to look for a way that they could benefit other people. I think whenever our country has gone through challenging times, you see a resiliency, you see a cohesiveness of people working together. And it's honestly how this podcast even started. It was during this time that I had this same idea of, hey, let's get people on that have different ideas that are positive, that people can learn from. And so I love your mindset around that, because I think it's something that people can learn from, whether that's in culinary, whether they're in sports, whether they're a philanthropist or whatever they're doing. Just that mentality that, hey, we're in a tough time right now, but there's a lot of good that can come out of this if you have the right mindset around it.
Yeah, it's not my quote, and I read it in a book, and I can't remember exactly which one. Um, I wanted I it was, I took it to heart when I first heard it. It's like, when somebody sees through me, I want them to like what they see. And I think that I'm not there yet. I think that's part of my my journey, is just getting better. And if that's in your craft, or that's in your life, or that's in community service, whatever it is, I think that this is the time where it's needed. It's a tough time. We have 40 million people unemployed. I think this is where we can help out in any way, little or small. Um, it's going to do a great deal. It's going to really shape of what we're going to do for the next 20, 30 years.
So awesome. That's awesome. As we wind down here, maybe just if you wanted to leave people with one tip of something that you've learned through this process of starting the cooking show, or even just other points in your career, maybe one tip that you would leave with people.
You have, well, there's two. I got two tips. So number
Okay.
one, I did not realize how good these kids are at cooking. Your kids could cook better than you think they can. That's number one. Number two was, this is not my quote again, but you have two ears and you have one mouth. So listen twice as much as you talk.
That's awesome. Hey, Paul, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciated having you on here. It was cool just to kind of get to hear your story and insights. And I really think people are going to get a lot out of this. And so appreciate your time, Paul Kirschbaum. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Dan. You have a good one.
All right. Take care.